Thank you very much for keeping it. Good morning, Kenya. This is all about paying tribute to the former President Daniel Rotich Arap Moi. Remember, he passed on yesterday. There was a presidential proclamation by President Uhuru Kenyatta. And this morning, we shall be putting into focus his legacy. What do you remember President Moi with? Well, you can give us your take. 20154 is the SMS line. Start with the word channel 1. Tell us your name and where you are watching us from to help us to talk about this great legend, this icon, the very second president of the Republic of Kenya. This morning, I'm joined to my extreme left by one man who has been in his leadership during Moi's era, former member of parliament, former cabinet minister. He is the Honorable Dr. Noah Wekesa. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
And in the middle, I'm joined by Professor George Wajackoyah. He is a party leader, Roots Party of Kenya. He also someone who has been in government, knows the corridors of justice. He is one man who is able to give us more details with regards to that. Karibu sana, Professor.
Thank you.
And next to me, I'm joined by Dr. Joseph Rotich, political analyst. Good morning, karibu sana.
Thank you.
All right, as we talk about celebrating the life of this statesman, when you hear the name Daniel Rotich Arap Moi, Mzee Moi, what is the first thing that comes into your mind? What is the first thing that you remember when you hear his name? Let me come to you, Honorable Wekesa.
I think the first thing is that he has been the longest serving head of state, and also the fact that he had more powers than the successive presidents. I remember him as a very kind person. Humility, I think, is associated with the name Moi. He has been a very polite person. I remember him as somebody who can talk to anybody, talk to children, talk to elders, talk to women, very polite in his mannerism. I remember him as a president who never went anywhere late. That is a problem to Kenyans. But I can assure you, when it comes to keeping time, even here today I came late. He never went to any function late, whether it was church, funeral, state function. He was always in time, and a very disciplined person. I remember him from 1970. I was a young veterinarian in Homa Bay. He came there, and after all the government functions, he wanted to see all the heads of departments, and he left the district commissioner with some money for us to celebrate his coming to Homa Bay. Now, this giving of money, he did it because he loved to assist people. He did not give out money for political reasons. This is something that I remember. He has been very generous. When I joined Parliament in 1988, I was appointed assistant minister, and I stayed in the Ministry of Agriculture for 5 years. But within that time, there were change of ministers, senior ministers 5 times, but I stayed there. And I have fond memories of President Moi for being a polite person, somebody who interacted with all grades of people. Moi would ring a villager in Trans Nzoia, having talked to the provincial commissioner, having talked to the district commissioner, but he wanted to compare what the villager was saying to see whether it goes with the provincial administration reports that he was getting.
All right.
So he could talk to anybody at any time.
So he was a timekeeper. His communication skills were on point.
Yes,
he
sir.
was someone who led by example.
Exactly.
And we will be coming into that, into all those nitty-gritties in a bit. But come to you, Professor Wajackoyah. When you hear President Daniel Rotich Arap Moi, the former president, what is the first thing that comes into your mind? What reminds you of him? What do you remember when you think of that name?
First of all, Ram, I'm very grateful to see and share with Dr. Noah Wekesa, whom I have seen and have copied from him some of the things that I do today. And I'm also glad to have hosted him in Los Angeles, California, when he came, and today we are meeting again.
Oh, okay.
I'm equally grateful to Dr. Rotich.
Amen.
And I will put a footnote before I go ahead, because a lot of people are waiting for me to speak.
Yeah.
But I've chosen to come and speak from here, KBC. And what I'm going to say today is to emulate Moi. I'll first of all put a footnote that I'll never say anything negative against Moi, because the Luhya custom does not allow Luhya or people of Luhya community to speak against the dead.
Yeah.
Because we are all going the same side, same way, and nobody among us or families would be very happy to hear somebody talking against the person who has departed. So my condolences to the family, and I'm also appealing to Gideon Moi that we are with him, and if time allows, I'm going to specifically attend this funeral. Now, why am I speaking that way? The reason why I'm talking this way is when you see me here, from my hair going down here, I am a product of Moi.
You're a product, full.
Moi made me to be what I am today, regardless of his shortfalls.
How
I was a street kid.
How
Yes.
was your product?
Yes, I was a street kid, and then I was picked up by Hare Krishna. I was a parking boy. I was picked up. I was taken to school. Kamode educated me, but Moi made me, because when he came to Kiganjo, when we were police recruits, 32 of us were all A-level students who had nowhere to go because there were no jobs. And the last thing somebody wanted to do in this world is to become a policeman in those days. So what could we have done? So when he came to Kiganjo, the passing parade, I remember, he told the late Joseph Kimeu Ngutu, who was the commandant, after he'd been told that we had Form 6s here, and he said, "Hivi jana yote rudisha." Rudisha Kiganjo. So we were the first people to go back to Kenya Police College for special training to be accorded with the inspectorate. What else can I say? He removed me from down there, and I became a man. And when I became a police inspector again, he came to my station when I was actually acting at the Kasarani police station as a pioneer officer at Kasarani during the All African Games. And he specifically told me, "Kijana, fanya kazi yako na bidii. Kuwa mnyenyekevu. Endelea hivi." That's why the discipline in me today, having served in the police, having served in the intelligence, is all accredited to Moi. My mindset, sometimes I think I'm Moi, but at times I say that having taken something from this man has helped me to be a very strong person. And that's why when I was outside, under circumstances that I cannot mention, for all the years I was in exile in Britain and the United States, I became a grave digger with the resilience with what I learned from Moi. So I went through the transition of life. I became stronger, and I'm very strong as I speak today. So his death is a unifying factor in this country, and we should look at him as a leader who came out of nowhere in those days when colonialism was still a paradigm that was shifting towards democracy. And he came and levelized the country, built up what he built, and let's not go into the negativity. That's my personal opinion.
And I love what you said, because you're bringing in the aspect of like father, like son. Mtoto nyoka ni nyoka. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Well, and let me come to you, Dr. Rotich. Just to give us also your opening
I think Ram, allow me to pass on my condolence to the family, friends, and the great nation of Kenya for the loss of this great man. Moi, to me, was not a simple man. And you are very sure that the name Moi, according to the Kalenjin connotation, you see, Moi, you said Rotich means the man who is embraced by the cows. And then Moi means calves. So relating the two names actually refers to a man who was embraced by the cows. And if you look at what really transpired later about the issue of milk, I related three, because there is the cows, there is the calves, and the milk. Maybe you'll elaborate that one later. So the former head of state, who is now, who has left us, was a great icon in many ways.
Yeah.
Personally, I had an opportunity to sit with Moi as a young graduate, and he taught us many things about the leadership of this great nation. And if you can look across, as I listen to the testimonies given by Dr. Wekesa and my great professor here, Moi's name became a household name in the Republic of Kenya because of what he did. And as Wekesa said, the former provincial administration in the whole Republic of Kenya, I tell you, every morning, Moi had the information from every corner of the Republic of Kenya. He was fully informed. He was fully in charge of the country. And he led this country by information. That is why he could go ahead of the administration to talk with the people, to see what the people are saying is it really a reflection of what is the report that is getting from the people themselves. So Moi was a man of the people.
And as you talk about Moi being a man of the people, there's so many things you've said, and we will be touching into that. Let's first of all start with his mode of communication. Dr. Wekesa, you talked about how he was communicating with you, and I remember during that time when you have the PCs, the Provisional Commissioners, and we had, by that time the kind of power that was given to them was quite high. You are a former minister, and I remember you were in the Ministry of Agriculture, Education, Science and Technology. There was a direct link between President Moi and those people that he connected with, a direct line, and everything started and ended with him. Nothing would happen without his knowledge. How was it for you working during his regime as a minister?
Let me state very clearly that under Moi's regime, I was an assistant minister in the Ministry of Agriculture, where I found the late Nyaga as the minister, and then I had Mwangale, and later on there was somebody from Nyandarua as the minister. So for 5 years I was there, and Moi was easy to speak to. If you wanted to see the president, it was easy.
You could do it directly?
Yes, you could do it directly. You could call him, you could call his office, and you would get a response. I started talking to him when he was a vice president. And I met him several times, and I was not an elected leader.
And it was easier by then?
Yes, I was an ordinary civil servant, and I met him through the late Choge, who took him to his office, and we talked about farming, because I'm also in Kitale as a farmer. He knew that, and he engaged me for a long time, and I was not an MP, I was not a senior person in government, and yet this man could actually get interested in me at that level, and that shows what type of person he was. Later on, of course, I became the chairman of KANU, And you know, the party Kano was so strong.
Yeah.
It
Only
was
party.
strong right up to the village. Moi knew that if you are a politician, you need a strong political party. And he really nurtured the party to be a people's party.
And
it was not a Moi's party. This was a national party, where even the chairman of the sub-location was recognized as a leader. A chairman of the district was a leader. And then, of course, if you became a member of the executive of Kano at a district level, you had an opportunity to address people as a leader, which something that we don't see now.
How do you see the style of communication, Professor Wajackoyah, that Moi used to have? You know, when it came to giving directives, when it came to displaying his authority, not just to his party members also, but also to the Kenyans at large.
First of all, I have to say that my proximity with the late Kanyotu and the intelligence community, and of course I'm not going to delve into details because of the oath of affirmation I swore. Moi used the intelligence more than any other.
Yeah.
And secondly, the kind of intelligence that particular time, and some of us being senior officers in the intelligence, we knew what kind of information to collect on the ground and pass it to State House every morning through the hierarchy. And the information we had was accurate. But Moi also had his own way of verifying that information, and that's why I come to agree with the Honorable Wekesa. He had target points that you could call, people who you could not believe that could speak with the president. You could call a PC to call so-and-so, or you could direct so-and-so to be near the PC's office on a certain day to verify certain information.
Didn't that kind of communication that he was using, that strategy, didn't it bring chills to people, thinking that, wow, the president himself is calling me?
But that's what you need. That's why we have to have a president. Even Trump has got people he calls. Even if I was in power, I would make sure that I have people to verify certain information, unless it's biased. But I can tell you for now that the kind of intelligence we had, the kind of the intelligence that Moi had, Moi was on top of everything that happened. We had had some kind of problems in Samburu where police officers have been killed or ambushed. During Moi's time, we'll never hear of that because he had that intelligence from everywhere, both from the military intelligence and the national security intelligence. And that's why I was advising the president, the current president, the other time, during those times, to actually apply a strategy to use the intelligence and to appoint intelligence officers to run some of these operations. And that's why you see people like Haji is doing a superb job. You see Twalib is doing a superb job. And during Moi's time, there was that kind of infiltration. The top was the civil appointment, but in was the intelligence mechanism. And that's how society works. You need, once society has come together, you come to obligate duties to be governed. So when you come to information gathering, information insemination, information, classification of information, Moi knew. And that's why you see that Uhuru today is blending towards the Moism in terms of running the administration of this country through the intelligence operations.
I see the Honorable Wekesa, you are agreeing with what he's saying.
Yes.
He's trying to lean in towards. Well, speaking of communications, because we talk about security, and let me come to you, Dr. Rotich. When it comes to security issues, how he handled security and intelligence during his time, was it the best?
You see, Ram, the basis or the backbone of security is the information. And that is why Moi dwells so much on the sources of information to manage the country.
Yeah.
You find at the moment we are talking about the terrorism kind of work, or the kind of the insecurities that we have witnessed in this country. I think normally the citizen would ask, you mean this thing was not foreseen? So one thing that I should appreciate the Moise government is that, as Dr. said, intelligence was key. So intelligence was the source of information. And then again, you used to hear of people visiting Moi. Moi used to have everybody on board visiting him. And in the process of the visit, he had all the information with the people. He had the intelligence. You heard of people. And one thing that was very funny with the late His Excellency, the President, was the kind of heart that he had, and that he could grasp the names of most people. Go to Okambani, he could name majority of the people. Go to Nyanza, he could name. So that kind of personal know-how on the people he was dealing with actually made him come closer and closer to the people than ever.
It means that he was a humble man at some point.
He was humble. No, he was not only humble. He was equally generous. You've heard of people visiting Moi. These people never came out of Moi's residence or his office without at least something.
They never left
empty-handed. They never left anybody empty-handed. And that is why Moi is remembered to date by all and sundry. It is because of the kind of generosity that he had.
You cannot go to Kabarak and leave empty-handed.
I think I want to add in this issue of security. You know, he used to say, Serikali cannot be run without security.
Yeah.
Now, siri ya serikali ni kali sana. Now, he would have an opportunity to appoint officers in government or ministers, and only he knew who was going to be the president, who was going to be a minister, who was going to be so and so. He would sit with people, and he was going to announce the cabinet, and nobody knew who was going to be. It's not for people to campaign, I want to be this, I want to be this. That was only a prerogative of the president. So he would sit with you, form the cabinet, and you think you are in the cabinet, and when the announcement is made, you are not there.
I think to concur with Dr. I can remember a time when you see people used to wait for 1 p.m. news to listen what changes would have actually happened, and you could come across Moi was seated with somebody in the morning, and they have done everything together. By the time he leaves, in 1 hour or less than 1 hour, the announcement is made that that man has been exited from the job. And then the guy will be saying, I was with the president this morning, I ate with him.
How was it when you were still in the ministry?
Yes.
You just hear from nowhere.
Yes. I remember somebody from Nandi, I forget his name. He was a minister. He had lunch. He had lunch with
I think it was Kipale Kones.
Yeah, he had lunch with the president. And when he went to drive home, there was no flag on the car, and he says, Bono umetoa? He says, I'm sorry, you know, you are not a minister anymore. Mimi nimekula na president sahi. and
at that point, you tune into, by that time, KBC News at Sasaba. The 1 o'clock news.
Oh, yes.
And then you just hear it being announced on radio.
Oh, yes. He maintained that only him can know who is going to be what, but not his wife, not his children, not his closest ministers. Only the president had that authority.
That was his
and he kept it up to the end. I remember Gumo was driving to Endebess in his farm, and on the radio it came that he was no longer an assistant minister. He left his car at the police station and walked home.
Walked home?
Yes, he walked home.
I can only imagine someone who was, well, respected. In the morning,
yes,
you are somebody, in the evening,
yes.
you're no longer. And I remember there was a time that we didn't have a vice president. I think it ran for around, was it 9 months? that we didn't have a vice president. How was it running government? How do you remember that, Professor Wajackoyah?
I think that question I'll pass to the wisdom.
Honorable Wekesa, you can take it away, no problem.
Yeah, because he had a functional cabinet, and he was in charge of every ministry. He knew what was happening in every ministry. So it did not worry him that there wasn't a vice president for some time. And
but that duration, wasn't it too long? I don't know if my calculations are correct. 9 months, wasn't it too long?
No, not really, because everything was still running in order. So he was, as we have said in this conversation, that he knew everything that was happening in every district, even at the grassroots level. He had every he had information from everybody, from the senior most to the villager. So he knew that he was in control.
He was in control for that period. And because of his control, he'll be able to find out who can be sacked.
I think
just a minute.
It's not about, yes, he was in control.
Yeah.
But you see, the then vice president was not as substantive as it is as of today. And much of what was done by the vice president was actually the delegated powers as at when it was possible. Otherwise, much of the focus was actually in the position of the president himself.
All right.
And as we said also, Moi had all the country at just at a glance. He knew everything that was happening on a daily basis. He knew a chief who was beaten by the wife in the village. He knew everything he knew.
And do you think that, Professor Wajackoyah, coming to you, it will be something that we would admire as a nation, that we need to go back to the regime when everything was known by the president, everything that happened in the country, compared to, now where something can happen and people can ask questions? Wasn't it foreseen?
Thank you very much. And I think when I should direct this question directly to the president, and I want to advise the president and the national security system. During our days, all national security intelligence officers were police officers. First of all, you get trained, and you come in, you get vetted, and you get in. But when they changed the constitution to have civilians to run the intelligence operations, that's when hell went loose. I would like the government to reconsider this again, to go back to the old thoughts and have standing police officers, administration police included, the military and ex-military in that case, to come back and form this and organize this formation. I'm not saying that the National Security Intelligence is not doing its work. Well, it's also not bad to include civilians in the system. But from what I know in Israel, and from what I know with the CIA, and what I know with the FBI, officers who are designated in the field must be trained, must be hardened. They must know how to stand in the operations. And that's why you see things changing. Anything can happen today because of bad training of the officers we have today. Some of them are sons of who is who. I want to have a landing pad when I finish the university by getting into the National Security Intelligence. We don't have the criteria. It is not known, it's not public. It is not vetted by the nation. And the only way to vet it is by going through the military, National Youth Service, and Kenya Police College.
And by then, someone who was considered a police, the kind of respect that was given to the police, to the, those who are in charge of intelligence, compared to now, the respect is it still the same?
In our days, we used to be watchmen. We could camouflage, could go burn maize while we were observing. Qualitative intelligence collection. We could go and
undercover.
Undercover. I mean, ours was qualitative. Inductive, collective, a collection of information. But today you find these little boys, I'm sorry to say, you find them in cafe where Mzee is going to sit with his cap. You see
In
him
a
there
tie.
in a tie, and he's actually on, what is that thing called? You
iPad.
can't collect intelligence in the open. I mean, the cover is actually blown. So we need President Uhuru Kenyatta, now that he's taken the country to the direction which we have been looking for.
All right.
I think the issue of intelligent information, Mr. Ram, I can say Kenyans have gone ahead as far as the collection of information is concerned.
Yeah.
I believe we have grown. But the challenge is, again, how ready are those who are using the information to utilize the same information?
Should we pick a leaf from the president's regime, from President Moi's era?
Yes, Moi made use of the information that was being collected by the intelligence. So I wonder if the same thing is still happening today. Because if we don't use this information, because there is a big difference between getting the information and using the information. Are you seeing? So if the information that the intelligence are gathering will not be used by the respective authorities or will not be implemented, it will remain to be information. Number two, when you look at the Moi regime, Moi utilized every bit of the information. That is why I was telling you, even a chief who was beaten by the wife in the village, Moi knew. Because every morning he was collecting information. But do we have now a system that calls every corner of the Republic of Kenya every morning to get to know what's happening? And do we utilize that? So respect of institutions.
Let me give you to have just a say on this with regards to security issues. How do you see security now with security then, Dr. Wekesa?
It's worse than it was in those days. But as we talk about his legacy, we must recognize the fact that the Constitution at the time had given Moi far more powers than the subsequent presidents, Mwai Kibaki, and now, of course, Uhuru Kenyatta. The two presidents that we have less powers than Moi had, and this is because of the Constitution of 2010, when a lot of powers were taken from the president. And in fact, I remember Moi at the time having retired, he said that we left the Constitution to the activists. Wow. A lot of issues that were put in the Constitution came from the activists, not from government. He said, you as a government, you should have had a strong hand in the new Constitution. You should have directed where the country was going to go. But you left a lot of things to be put in the Constitution from the activists. And this is why we see some of the things happening. The president today cannot do what Moi used to do. You know, he can appoint somebody, and because of the Constitution now, that person goes to be vetted by members of parliament, or Omtata comes up with information, and he goes to court, and that thing is nullified. That could not happen in Moi's days.
And I'm also seeing, as you're talking, we are seeing images there of the former President Moi together with South Africa's former President Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
Both of them have passed away. But if at all you look at this kind of connection, the relations that the former President Moi built between Kenya and other countries, international relations, international ties, how was it?
Very good. I'm thinking of America. America loved what he was doing, and we built a very strong relationship with the United States. Similarly, Britain, he worked very, very well with the British Prime Minister. So I think that for what he was, a strong leader. This came out very, very clearly in the outside world.
Still on issues of jurisdictions, you've been in Kenya, you've also been in the US, you've seen how things were that time that you were also in exile. We will not dwell on that. But now, specifically with regards to the Kenya and other countries, the ties between Kenya and other countries, how did Moi build that? How do you see that kind of strong ties that we had?
First of all, the effect of the Cold War. The effect of the Cold War propelled Moi to do things, or to head to look for allies, so that we could check the balance of power between the capitalists and the communists. And during that time also, the country needed allies that could spur the economy and propel national security. In one way, I would say this: it is not Moi who looked for the allies, it's allies who looked for Moi.
Why was it so?
The Soviet Union bloc at that particular time wanted to maintain the status quo, regional status quo. And at the same time, the Americans, or the West through the CIA operations, wanted to countercheck the power balance in this region. So Moi had no choice. Moi had to do what he had to do, but he did it in a very crafty way, in that he safeguarded the interests of this nation, even though the bad part, I'm not going to speak about them, which was inevitable at that time. And if we have to compare that or analyze the situation with what happened in America, where Americans could not allow people to form parties, particularly the Communist Party, which is even outlawed in the United States, then do we have to blame Moi because of the aftermath of the Cold War? Whereas it was also happening, and it continues to happen in America today, where Americans cannot allow, the Constitution cannot allow an American citizen to form a party with the insignias of communism. So when it comes to regional cooperation, Moi was good at it. And you must also know that Kenya was a strategic security point to the Middle East, to the safeguarding of security, national security in the Middle East, and the state of Israel, of course, had to survive. So there were takes and gives during that particular time. And then activism also came in, as he correctly said, and took advantage of the polarized nation at that particular time. Given the fact that we had had people who were incarcerated for a very long time as a result of the aftermath of the communist and the compression between the superpowers fighting for domination. And then what do? Activists come in and they sneak in the new constitution we have. Is a horrible constitution. I did not vote for it because I saw.
The one we have now?
Yes, it's one of the most horrible constitutions in this world is this one. Why do I have to say this as a lawyer and as a professor of high standing? Doing my second PhD. People think I'm a madman, but I'm not mad. If you go to the United States today, you find out that the crimes of homicides, when somebody commits murder, he's incarcerated for life until he's released otherwise. In this country with activism, you kill somebody today, you run to court because the Constitution says that you have to be brought before the courts within 24 hours.
All right, we will come into how we are handling the issues to do with the justice system, how it was handled then, and how it is being handled now. Because by then, remember, we used to have people, being taken and detained. We had people like Honorable Raila Odinga, we had Koigi Omwere, so many people. But coming to you, Dr. Rotich, what is your take with regards to this?
The issue, I look at Moi as a true African.
Yeah.
Because whenever you used to talk about and against the the European countries about, they used to say, let us love ourselves as Africans. Let us learn to live together as Africans. And because of the Kenya strategic position, and also Moi leadership placed us in the world map. And we were recognized. You can remember, Banaram, when IMF and these other countries denied any loan to Kenya. Moi stood for all those days without any loan from any foreign country. And he told Africans and African countries that we must stand as Africans and we must respect ourselves as Africans, because there is none outside there who respect us. And because of that patriotism, and that Africanism. Moi stood as one of the leaders who were to be consulted, even by other African countries, for their own affairs. He also is a man also who encouraged peace. You can remember the issue of Sierra Leone, you can remember Somalia. Moi stood and he participated, even in contributing food to some of the countries, like the Rwandan. So what do we see in Moi? We see Moi as a leader who stood as an African who loved Africans. And he did what he did to help Africa. So with the relationship that we have with the other parts of the world, there were some chitteries, especially when the multipartyism came into being. There were a lot of ups and downs, activism, which were actually before 1982. A lot of things actually had happened. And some people may perceive Moi to have ruled single-handedly. But you see, we also have to see the situation as by that time, how we could contain. So when we are reflecting more in that perspective, we must understand the then environment.
You could not have, that was
You
the
could
best
not,
way that you could have
yes,
done it. You couldn't have done it any
it
better.
would have, yeah, it would have been done, it would have done, I mean, it could have been done everywhere.
Now, coming to you, Dr. Wekesa, you were elected into parliament for the first time in 1988.
I was.
And I remember these were just some of the last one-party system
Yes.
form of election in Kenya.
Yes,
And then that's when we came up with multi-partyism
Yes,
in the country.
1992.
In 1992.
Yes.
Well, how was the transition from a one-party state to a multi-party state?
Well, I must say that I give credit to the late President Moi because, as we have said in this conversation this morning, that he was a good communicator, he used information from the ground. Moi reached a stage when he saw that Kenyans were crying out for multipartyism. And he gave in. He gave in 2002, and he said, let's allow multipartyism. So he ushered in multipartyism. Section 2A, you remember?
Yeah.
So he was a progressive leader.
Was that the best move for the nation as talk about multipartyism from a one-party state?
Yes. So we created these parties. The problem is that he had a very strong party called KANU, and it's still going on 60 years, 70 years after its formation. He believed in a strong party, and he wondered whether we were going to keep this culture. And of course, you have seen now, after that, after KANU, we have had parties. Parties that don't have structures. We've had parties that are what we call briefcase parties.
Ideologies were not strong.
Take my party, Jubilee. Jubilee doesn't have a strong structure.
Comparing it with KANU?
It doesn't have a strong structure. KANU had grassroots support through the leadership of members of the party, right from sublocation, location, district, way up.
You remember during that time, former President Moi got into an alliance with Ronald Gala, coming up with KADU.
Yes.
Do you and at some point KADU was is no longer there.
Yeah.
Won't you say that it is the same thing that we are seeing now that happened by then? It's just the same thing.
We should take a leaf out of the party KANU that Moi helped to build. That you want power, therefore you need a strong party. And a strong party does not mean that you are the only funding, you are the only funder of the party. The party must have grassroots support. The structure of the party starts with the people. The party must belong to the people. The party should not belong to 2 or 3 people in Nairobi. The villager who is the chairman of that party must be recognized. because the villager is the one who is with the people at that level, and therefore he'll popularize the party. We still have, I think, apart from ODM, I don't see any party that has a structure that would make it last as long as KANU has lasted.
Do you agree with him, Professor Wajackoyah? Are our political parties people-oriented, if that is the right terminology?
I'm a political party leader of the Roots Party of Kenya, and what Mheshimiwa said is exactly correct. Because, one, some of these parties come up without ideology. They want to achieve a target. They want people to lay over. People have been refused nomination from other parties just to make money, even though the new constitution or the Political Parties Act has actually brought a lot of lining and stringence, whereby forming a party now, you have to go through a lot of bureaucracy and tests and what have you. But a lot of these parties lack ideology.
They lack ideologies. The same, does it reflect for Roots Party?
No.
Do you feel your party, does it have
It's
ideologies?
not my party. It's the People's Party.
The People's
It's
Party.
the membership party. I'm also just advised on what's going on the ground.
Interesting take. Your take on
I
that?
think what Moi had in his mind with the strong KANU is that he was not against the multipartyism. What Moi was against was the divisive manner in which the parties would actually come up with. Otherwise, that is what Moi used to stress. And he said, my greatest fear is that we are borrowing a democracy that is foreign. The understanding of the African about democracy was quite different, because democracy was to do anything that would defy the nation.
I remember there was a time he was even questioning, then do we go back to a one-party state? When he was speaking in a public gathering, that how comes we have this party, the ideologies that are being formed. And he alluded to tribalism.
You see, what Moi was fearing is that why we should form parties that will embrace the Kenyan face. It should not be a party that embraces a tribe or an ethnic community.
Or a region.
Or a region.
Yes.
And that is actually, that is the reflection of what we have now. You talk about a party and you remember where the leadership is coming from. And now these parties are no longer based on ideologies. They are based on a situation whereby they want to have a bargaining power to form the next government.
Isn't that a blanket judgment on all parties in Kenya?
That is it. That is what's happening now.
Isn't that a blanket judgment on all parties in Kenya, comparing them with how KANU used to run?
Yes, yes. I think the legacy, one of the legacies that Moi has left, apart from education and other things, is a strong party. We must go back to that. And I think President Uhuru Kenyatta and Honorable Raila Odinga are bringing us to the right path.
Okay.
That we should have a national conversation.
Through the handshake.
Yes, through the handshake, we should bring all Kenyans together, and even if it means forming a strong party that will have grassroots support and weed out this regionalism, these tribal parties, so much the better. So we must unite our people, even through the political parties.
You've given examples. You've mentioned ODM is a strong party, in your view, based on ideologies that are people-oriented. You are a party leader of Roots Party. You said Roots Party is also having strong ideologies. But we have had so many parties that have been there for so long. Look at the parties that were formed even after, the president, during President Moi era. So many parties that were formed by then that are still existing now. What about those parties?
Yeah, the problem with parties is that they don't have a transparent election. They have a manifesto. They don't keep to that manifesto. A party should not just have one leader who doesn't go through competitive elections.
Within the party.
I remember my former party called Fort Kenya, when the late Vice President Wamalwa Kijana was there. He agreed that every 5 years we have elections. and he submitted himself to an election. And the election was transparent right from the sublocation. And then would come up and elect the leaders. That doesn't happen anymore in Fort Kenya. We have had Wetangula there as the party leader. He has never been challenged
as a party leader
by anybody. And I think that goes to many parties like that. So what I'm saying is this, that if we want to borrow a leaf from Kanu, which was strengthened by the late Moi, we must have transparent elections. We follow the manifesto of the party. We have a vision, and we have elections. When time comes, everybody is submitted to Wananchi for elections, so that the party becomes a people's party rather than somebody up there with a lot of money giving and nominating leaders.
I think it will be very good for this country that we have very few parties. If we have more than 20 parties in a small country like this one, you can expect tribal parties. You can expect parties based on ethnic backgrounds. So if the issue of handshake, as it is, as Dr. said, will bring us next to few parties in the Republic of Kenya, I think that is the right direction to follow. But the greatest problem that we are facing is that in every formation that we do in this country, there is a political interest behind the whole thing. So if we remove that kind of personal interest and anticipate for public interest, that will be the beginning of our victory. What is this thing that we are forming? Will it benefit the whole country, or will it benefit the few individuals? Those are some of the things that we must look at when we are making something that we should have a national face, like a party.
Because all of this, you're talking about ideologies.
Yes, ideology.
Right? Now, let's talk about one, if I put it, ideology that we had, or that was very, very openly seen from former President Moi. We had the Nyayo philosophy. The Nyayo philosophy. We had, I remember Governor John Lunyangapuo yesterday said that the nation had lost a selfless leader who will forever remain in the hearts of many with his Nyayo philosophy of peace, love, and unity. Same thing was said by Baringo County Governor Stanley Kiptis. You know, and Governor Lunyangapuo said, and I quote, Mzee Moi was not only an icon, but a true son of Africa and Kenya. The Nyayo philosophy of peace, love, and unity. Was it achieved? Did it bring an impact to the nation, Professor Wajackoyah?
It was hijacked by those who are around the president. They took advantage of the president, and they enriched themselves, and they made sure that they demonized those who they perceived to be enemies of that philosophy. But nevertheless, even when that was happening, Moi was steadfast, because he relied on the intelligence that we gave him, and he was able to neutralize those kind of activities. Unlike today, when we see, and what we see, people who are around the presidency, people who are around the deputy president, doing what they are doing, which I'm not going to mention. During Moi's time, those things would not have happened.
Those could not have
so,
happened.
To sum up, before he comes in.
Love, peace, and love, and unity. That was the Nyayo philosophy. He practiced it. Moi, not at any time did he have tribalists around him. His cabinet had fewer Kalenjins than anybody else. There were more Luyas in Moi's cabinet than Kalenjins.
He was trying to curb tribalism.
He was trying to curb tribalism, and he lived that. He showed it in action. That at any one time, Kenya must be united. And to unite, he brought Kikuyus very close to him. Some of his best advisors were not Kalenjins. They were Kikuyus or Kambas. You know, we know those names.
There was a balance of all tribes.
Definitely. So the way we are going, peace, and love and unity. That's the Nyayo philosophy. That's a legacy that President Moi has left to Kenya.
Professor Wajackoyah, you are summing up your comments with regards to that.
I think he has summed it up for me very nicely. And you know me, I go by wisdom.
You go by wisdom.
Yes.
Dr. Rotich.
I think, let me just say this. Peace, love, and unity was achieved to a large extent.
Yeah.
Because for a nation that was united by the same philosophy for more than 20 years, it was a big success. And let me tell you, Ram, talk about people of Dr. Wekesa's age and above. They sang Kanu until it sang into their blood. I mean, you could see everybody singing Nyayo, Nyayo, Nyayo.
Yeah.
That means it was, in fact, there was a time when there was a visiting president who came to this country. And Kibaki is the one, actually, it was during Kibaki's time. And whilst Saitoti was welcoming the person, he said, Moi had a landslide victory. And he pronounced, but Moi was already gone. So the man had ingrained all the wisdom and all the knowledge until it was so personalized that it was almost like a religion. It was in the hearts of many. And that is why Moi will be remembered for many, many years.
Did you also have the feeling, you know, during the time of Kanu, Kidole Kimoja, you know, Harambe, Nyayo?
Oh yes, I was the chairman of Trans-Nzoia Kanu, and I interacted him very, very closely. We supported his love, peace, and unity, and I'll not leave this program without saying that one of the biggest legacies that he has left is that we had almost forgotten about tribalism. Because of KANU, as a strong party, as a national party, we didn't have these political parties that are now tribal and have leaders who don't face elections. But in those days, we went for elections right from the grassroots. Up to Nairobi, we came and elected our leaders, and the party was a people's party and not a Moi's party.
I love what you've said there. Remember, you should be part of this conversation. What do you remember former President Moi with? 20154 is the SMS line. Start with the Watch Channel 1. Our Twitter handle is also up and running. The hashtag is Good Morning Kenya on Twitter. Now, former President Mzee, he did so many projects, opened so many schools. And Uasin Gishu Governor Jackson Madago said this yesterday, and I quote, as a county, we are privileged to have projects like the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital and the Eldoret International Airport, all of which were initiated by Mzee Moi. As we speak today, the projects are having a very big impact to the development of this country. Moi opened so many schools during his era. I remember there was a shift from the 7-4-2-3 education system that was, moved that was inherited from the colonial government to the 8-4-4 system during Moi's era. And right now we are moving to another system, the CBC. But what do you think about all these projects that, former President Moi did? All the schools he opened, all the hospitals he brought up. Your thoughts, Dr. Rotich?
I think Moi laid a very strong foundation for what Kenyans are experiencing today. Because as we talk about the Moi's achievement, I can see so many achievements that he made. In terms of education, Moi achieved a lot. Go every vicinity of this nation, you will get Moi, a name Moi. And most of these institutions are universities, they are secondary schools, and some are primaries. And it was not only in Baringo, everywhere in the Republic of Kenya. Number two, Moi was a great preserver of environment. He talked about the environmental protection, mmomonyoko wa udongo, ile ya zamani ambayo ilikuwa imejulikana sana. So those were the initiative of the President Moi. He enhanced peace. He enhanced mambo ya hospitali. He built hospitals in every district of the then districts that we are talking about. So Moi laid the foundation for what we are seeing today. And Kibaki came to cement. Kibaki actually made a springboard of what Moi had actually built. And for sure, even His Excellency the President, Kenyatta, the foundation that Kibaki laid on top of what Moi had laid is what they are going on, like the infrastructure.
I remember back in 2009, Dr. Wekesa, you're complaining about deforestation that was happening in the country, and you say this, and if I would quote you, a lot of forests were destroyed in the 90s due to politics. The present government is trying to rectify the situation, but it is proving to be a challenge. That's what you said during it was a launch of the ministry's strategic plan for 2009 to 2013. What do you think about that?
Yes, as Dr. Rotich has said, when the President Moi took over his term as president, he was very keen on environment. And we saw him building gabions, we saw him planting trees. When you leave Nairobi and you're going towards Naivasha, all those forests on the left side, Moi actually participated in planting those trees. So we saw him as a strong defender of environment. Later on, the politics took over, and people started moving into forests, and that is the time that we were losing our policies on environment. So the politics really spoiled what he had set out to do, people invading the forests.
All right. Because of the interest of time, we cannot be able to talk about the projects that he did. But this morning, I was joined by Dr. Noah Wekesa, former, minister, member of parliament, was there during Moi's regime. Professor George Wajackoyah, party leader, Roots Party of Kenya, and Dr. Joseph Rotich, a political analyst. That brings us to the end of this discussion, celebrating the life of a statesman. Now, as we wrap things up, do you remember one thing that we used to bring as KBC, Ziara ya Rais? Well, take a look at this.